Hey everybody, welcome to Greg's Garden. Today I want to talk about nitrogen depletion when you're putting carbon-based mulches on your garden. And one of the ones I use, chopped straw. I use pine bark, nuggets, or wood mulch out front, ground up leaves, and the last one I use a lot of for my mowing is grass clippings. Notice that these are green. They still have nitrogen in them, but as soon as they turn brown like these others, they become carbon, and that can present a problem that is sometimes perceived much larger than it actually is. So it's called nitrogen depletion, because what happens is there's too much carbon and not enough nitrogen to break these things down to turn them into soil. So that nitrogen comes from someplace, and where does it come from? It comes from your garden. There's a misconception that nitrogen will come all the way from the root zone up to the top in order to help break it down. That's not a fact at all. It's not true. The nitrogen that's taken to break down these four materials here comes from the top of the soil. And the good news is that when everything is broken down and composted, the nitrogen returns to the soil. Now, that carbon to nitrogen ratio is 25 to 1. 25 pieces, atoms, molecules, what have you, of carbon to 1 molecule, atom, whatever you want to call it, of nitrogen. And the perfect range is 25 to 30 pieces of carbon to 1 piece of nitrogen. That makes efficient composting, breaking everything down so that no nitrogen is robbed from the soil. Now, like I said, it does come from your soil, but it comes from the top of the garden. It doesn't come from the root zone. If you're still concerned about the nitrogen depletion from the top of your soil, you can just add a little bit more fertilizer to the top, like some slow-release nitrogen. You could sprinkle a little bit more Osmocote or Scott's Rosenbloom, which I use, which has the nitrogen buffered so it releases over an extended period of time, or just sprinkle your favorite organic fertilizer across the top. That should be enough to compensate for being worried about any nitrogen coming from the garden that's going to damage your plants, and it should make the carbon to nitrogen ratio back in line so that everything composts completely. Now, completely different story if you're filling your raised beds with logs, twigs, and branches. That's going to be way out of line because there's a lot more branches and twigs and logs in the bottom of your garden than a couple inches of mulch on the top. That is more difficult because that nitrogen will come from the root zone and it can have an effect on your plant's growth. So how much more nitrogen do you have to add? I don't think anybody knows unless you dig down there and find out what that ratio is. So just be careful when you're filling your beds with all that extra carbon on the bottom. You might want to put a good shot of fertilizer in there so you can rest assured that your garden is going to grow very well for you. Thanks for watching my videos. My name is Greg Dreiss, and this is Greg's Gardens.